Okay, we need to talk about her. If you've been on my channel long enough, you probably know that I have a rather interesting relationship with Makima as a character, and as I like to play into the memes and generic cringe, which I only realized later that some of you might genuinely think that I have a problem or that I'm serious, which is fun. But for me personally, Makima is one of the most fascinating villains ever scripted in a shonen manga. Now typically, when you have the anime manipulator archetype, the person is some genius villain, a puppet master, an expert strategist, and even an overpowered, handsome powerhouse. I'm looking at you, Aizen, and while Makima crosses many of these boxes, there's something distinctly different in the way that she controls her pawns, because she's effectively a larger-than-life character, as her presence supersedes the actual Chainsaw Man manga. Whether it be some random Twitter followers barking away at a Makima cosplayer, or even me fighting the divorce lawyer devils and the Drone times Makima divorce arc, this lustful feminine aura captivates Makima, her hypnotic eyes that spiral into infinity, and her calm composure that lulls you into a false sense of security. She doesn't come across like a villain, but the girl next door, and that's the entire realistic deception about Makima. And with Denji as her lens, we witness how easily it is for anyone to fall under her spell.
Denji,
Huh?
you have agreed to become my pet, so you're officially under my care now. Which means woof or yes are all you say. Things like no don't come out of my dogs.
Now, to understand the role that Makima plays as the antagonist of Part 1, we first need to understand Denji's perspective of her character, since it's through his eyes that we learn how Makima controls and manipulates. Now, Denji at the beginning of Chainsaw Man is an empty husk, a dreamless, worthless individual who's existing day by day, attempting to pay off his father's debts to the Yakuza. His father allegedly took his own life, his mother passed away from some heart problem, and these things that that we take for granted, like sliced bread with jam, that's a delicacy to Denji. Denji is just kind of going through the motions. He has these vacant desires that he knows will never come true, like going on a date or hugging a girl. He totally expects that he will die before he pays off these debts, so these are just empty wishes. But the overarching message that's being instantly established is that Denji just wants a normal life and escape the chaos and despair. But what's interesting is by the end of the first chapter, many of these dreams are answered. Denji gets to hug a girl, and a lot of these other wishes and desires will soon follow after. And of course, the culprit of these things is Makima. Crazy, I know, it's almost like she's the subject of this video. But as Makima makes her first appearance, she gives Denji two choices. He can die as a devil or live as a pet under Makima. And if he does that, then she will take care of him. And well, the choice is obvious. For Denji, it's like a dream come true. And Makima knows this, because what is realized much later in the story is that Makima was pulling his strings, setting him and Vegeta up from the very beginning. But for Denji, Makima is the embodiment of all his dreams. A beautiful girl who treats him well and gives him food. So of course he falls for her instantly, and you can't really blame him either. But even from the beginning, there's something very unsettling about the way that Makima carries herself. To her pets, she expects them to obey without hesitation, to agree or bark at her command, and those who say no get euthanized. And initially, Denji hates this. He actually sees past Makima's appearance and can envision her ugly core. But once he gets his first job done and receives his reward, when Makima gives him his treat, so to say, he forgets all about it. Very much so the carrot and stick method, but it works. And right there, we understand that's how Makima controls her pets. So which Isekai protagonist had it the worst? Now Kazuma is a pretty fair contender. If Konosuba is a joke, he's always the punchline. Naofumi also endured a tough start, hated and falsely accused just for being the shield hero. And then we have Subaru, who entered his Isekai with dreams of a fantasy life, only to suffer endless hardship and failures. But if you want to negate the Subaru special when you get Isekai'd, then try enjoying a chill experience with Isekai Slow Life. Isekai Slow Life is a fun game, where you start from the bottom in an Isekai world and learn to build and manage a thriving town, forming bonds with adorable anime-style characters. Recently, I played through the game and was impressed by how well Savo's character story was written. He feels human. He's not your average character. He's a golden-hearted, goofy hero, but at the same time decisive and intelligent. It's characters like Salvo that make the adventure a cultural discovery, perfect for fans seeking an immersive story in the gameplay. You can download Isekai Slow Life with the link in my description and use the gift code MUSHRUM to get 10 free draws on premium items. Don't become like these guys, and try out Isekai Slow Life today. Now, from Denji's perspective, specifically at the beginning of Chainsaw Man, it doesn't really matter if Makima is a bad person or a good person, because she's giving him so much, and these rewards that he gets from her, regardless of how service level they are, become his primary motivation and his very reason for existing. And this choice to being a devil hunter is a pretty simple decision, because in contrast to the life that he was living, the current one is a dream, especially when Denji sets his eyes on some certain assets of Makima's. At that point, our guy is cooked. But things take a dramatic turning point for Makima's character in response to that dream that Denji is now chasing. And from there, we begin to peel back the mask and understand the inner machinations of Makima's nature. And probably the most significant aspect of her characterization is the fact that Makima is objectively hot. Yup, bet you didn't expect that in a serious character analysis, I would find some way to glaze Makima. Okay, maybe you would, considering this is my video. But yeah, Makima being conventionally attractive is not only canon to Chainsaw Man, it's wildly important to the way that she controls. You see, Makima is self-aware of her attraction, and it's both explicitly and implicitly shown throughout Chainsaw Man how this service level characteristic can absolutely change everything. Whether it be Denji's clear attraction to Makima, where for the majority of Chainsaw Man Part 1, she's the girl that he's chasing, but even in terms of the side characters, like Aki, or even the collection of the weapon hybrid devils, they're totally obsessed with her. I mean, Makima decimated Kwanji's devil harem, and here she is lusting after her. Reze doesn't even swing that way, and she's all up in Makima's business. Like, that might be the coldest disrespected Denji that I've ever seen. But I think the most interesting interaction of Makima's influence is with Aki, because very early on in Chainsaw Man, he has this overtly protective, almost divinized viewpoint of Makima. He's smitten when she compliments him. The first thing he tells Denji is that she's a good person and that he owes her his life. But as time passes, and Aki becomes closer with Denji in power, building a real family dynamic in the midst of the Chainsaw Man chaos, we realize that Makima's control, just like her beauty, is surface level. And I think one of the greatest moments that brings this fact to life is right after Aki, Power, and Denji go on their trip to Hokkaido. It's this moment that changes Aki and makes him realize that there are things he desires more than his vengeance. And that's why afterwards, when he meets with Kishibe, he tells him that he wants Special Division 4 to back out from the expedition to eliminate the Gun Devil, even though that's been his driving force, the fundamental reason as to why he became a devil hunter. But just imagining an outcome where Power and Denji lose their lives was too much for him to bear. It's later contrasted with this moment where the Angel Devil tells Aki to quit public safety and get a normal job. But Aki rejects his message, claiming that despite the traumatizing work of a devil hunter, he's willing to stay in this occupation. Well, one, for Denji and Power. Two, because the future devil said he's gonna perish soon anyways, so it doesn't really matter. And then coincidentally, he also adds on Makima, and then Angel is all like, oh right, you like her, that makes sense, and Aki agrees. To which Angel questions why did he fall for Makima in the first place? And Aki doesn't have an answer, a simple recollection. Nothing. And inwardly, he does understand that his relationship with Makima, in comparison to his dynamic with Denji and Power, is false and hollow. But he can't reject these feelings. He can't reject this control. And it's not just him. When we get to the weapon devil hybrids that Makima has manipulated, it's all under the same circumstances, where at some point in their fabricated memory, Makima saved them, and then they proceeded to become infatuated with her. Makima's beauty is the initial attraction, the trap to get people under her thumb, because before the person knows it, they're being manipulated, they're being puppeteered, and signing contracts with Makima when it's already too late. Now, throughout Chainsaw Man Part 1, there are constantly these allusions to animals. You know, dogs and cats. And of course, at the center, we got Makima. Denji and Power take after dogs and cats respectively, where Denji, after losing his parents, became this stray dog living in the gutter. This symbolism is carried with his parallel with Vegeta, and the overarching motif of this persona that is evident with Denji is now pursuing his basal urges through Makima. You know, a dog is on good behavior if he gets his treat, which Power was more than willing to offer up. Now, Power is like the stray cat, which is contrasted throughout her dynamic with Denji, and the two character associations result them with being these domesticated animals. Poor Aki. this guy is like the dog walker or the chew toy. Bro is caught in the middle, and he's either there to clean up the mess or suffer. And then there is Makima, who is many things: the pet handler, the pet owner, and at times the dog pound altogether. And it intrinsically underlines the much darker problem that Makima experiences in relation to how she connects to others. You see, Denji and Power, they see their pets as friends. Bushido was Denji's best buddy. Miaoi was Power's first companion, an attachment that she would risk her life to protect. But Makima sees any of her subordinates as tools or pets. Now, she does expect that potentially with Chainsaw Man or Pochita, she can develop a genuine connection. And overall, all these themes, all these characters, it connects back to this other thematic story within Chainsaw Man, the tale of the country mouse and the town mouse from Aesop's Fables. The country mouse lives in safety, but never gets the delicious food from the city, while the town mouse does get that delicious food, but runs the higher risk of getting killed by humans or cats. It's an allegory for Denji, or anyone else who makes the choice to live as a devil hunter. You live a good life, but a short one at that. But ironically, as it's revealed by the angel devil, the one who always brings these mice to the city is Makima. When she's eliminating Reize, she agrees with her, sharing her sadistic fondness for the country mouse. The country mouse is meant to live in relative safety, but Makima's fascination is strictly to uproot that safety. She takes these rats, uses them for whatever she can, and later she has her dogs exterminate them, taking pleasure in every facet of that control. And the moment that actually brings this all together is the Makima is listening panel. Now, Makima represents this distortion of motherhood, with all these allegories describing her as this corrupt Mother Mary, and the most significant detail connecting the two together is the importance of animals. Artwork of Mother Mary consistently depicted her with animals. It's an incarnation of her spirituality. She's so connected to animals that there's a widespread superstition that the M on the forehead of tabby cats represents Mother Mary. And Makima flips the script of this idea because, well, for one, Mother Mary had an affinity to cats, and Makima is a dog mom. But secondly, the notion of Makima is always listening has to do with animals. With the reveal that Makima is the control devil, many of these small details begin to line up as to the way that characters in Chainsaw Man obey or fear Makima, almost like to this religious degree. This perceived hierarchy is how she's able to borrow the senses of smaller life forms, like rats or birds. And knowing that Makima is canonically blind and only recognizes individuals by scent further drives home the irony, because with the whole Makima is listening panel, she actually parodies this to extreme extents. Reize cuts off Denji's hand and consoles him, and later Makima does the same to her. When Denji says to the zombie devil in chapter 1, "If you're gonna get in my way, then die," Makima throws that back in his face during their final fight. And in her own twisted way, this almost seems like her attempt to connect with humanity through these gates and walls and labels of her own creation. She trains her pets, she uses her people as watchdogs, and never gets attached whether she wants to or not. Those feelings, these emotions, those sensations that she's chasing, it's always out of reach.
See, I have a nose that detects certain things most can't, and it knows you aren't lying.
What's really interesting to me is that contrary to the means that Makima goes about her ambitions, her dream was always to create a perfect world free of hardship and suffering. Now, close to the end of Chainsaw Man Part 1, Denji asks Makima that in her ideal world, would there still be bad movies? And she responds by saying that the world would be better off if bad movies didn't exist. And it's at that point that Denji says, "I guess I gotta kill you after all then." Now, Makima's primary motivation was to use Pochita's ability to create a better world, erasing everything that causes misfortune or harm to humanity. You know, disease, war, death, and of course, bad movies. But to understand the core of Makima's philosophy, we have to go back to the time that her and Denji went on their movie date. Now, during their date, they had a back-to-back movie marathon, where most of the movies they saw were pretty bad. But it wasn't until they saw that last movie that rewrote the entire day. A simple scene that by all accounts wasn't really significant, but it resonated with the two of them, bringing not just Denji, but the cold-hearted Makima to tears. And then afterwards, they discuss the movies they saw, and it's this one sentence right here that just hits me, where Makima says that one movie was worth the cost of all of today's tickets. For Makima, if she could delete the price of each of those movies and replace it with the good movies, then she would without hesitation. That's what constitutes as a perfect world for her. But what Makima can't realize is the flaw within that perspective. If she didn't experience all those bad movies, she would never come to know what a good movie is. Because if there's no bad movies, that means there's no good movies either. It's like Denji, who is constantly chasing the ideal of a normal life, wondering that if it's even possible, considering all the struggle he's been through. And ironically, it's those same hardships that create a normal life. No life is perfect. We all struggle and suffer, and it's that pain that connects us. I mean, when you think about it, that's what bonded Pochita and Denji together. But Makima could never fathom this concept. It's something that would always elude her, regardless of how many times she chased it. But the family she wants, those connections she desires, they would never be in her grasp. And it's strange because those things that Makima can never control were always in front of her. She just couldn't see it.